Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be hauling some children's and young adult books. So quite a few of these books you would have already heard me talk about and review on the channel. I have a couple of habits or quirks or almost kind of mental blocks when it comes to the routine of hauling books and reading them. The first of those I've spoken about a couple of times on the channel, which is unless I've hauled a book, I don't feel like I can read it. It feels like if I read and review it on the channel before I've hauled it, it's somehow out of process. And I particularly find myself fighting against that habit when it comes to children's and young adult books, because I tend to read them typically a lot quicker than I would read fiction for adults or non-fiction for adults. So when I have a children's or YA book come onto my TBR, I kind of want to get to it really quickly because I feel like I will read it really quickly. And I also find myself leaning towards children's and young adult books towards the end of the month. And that's the other kind of little quirk and habit I have with my reading since creating content about my reading for so many years. If we're getting towards the end of the month and I would like to start a new book, I don't feel like I can pick up a particularly chunky book if I'm not going to finish it by the end of the month. So I tend to gravitate towards quicker reads. So typically a lot of the books for younger readers that are on my shelves, they don't stay unread for as long as some of the books for adults. Also, I feel the need to really keep on top of my work reading as well. And I'm going to whistle through a lot of the workbooks that have come onto my TBR at the end of this video. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the books that I've either been sent by other publishers or just bought myself because I was really excited to read them. I'm obviously excited for all of my work reading as well, but I don't tend to spend too much time talking about those books in haul videos because it kind of makes me go into work mode. So I'm going to start with two young adult graphic novels. The first of those you'll have definitely heard me talk about on the channel before, and that is Heartstopper Volume 5. I've already read this one and reviewed it. It's the 5th volume in Nick and Charlie's very adorable but also at times quite hard-hitting teenage romance. I don't feel like I need to give this much introduction. Most of you have read this already. Most of you have watched the Netflix series, particularly because it's a graphic novel and because it's such a cozy read. This was one that certainly came onto my TBR and then I basically immediately read it one evening. And I had a really similar experience with reading Homebody by Theo Parrish. Now this is more of a kind of young adult graphic memoir. So it is about the author and the illustrator, the creator of this book, Theo, explaining and exploring their gender identity, showing us the moments that were difficult and challenging, but also showing us the moments that were beautiful and hopeful, welcoming and accepting, the moments of euphoria that they experience as they learn more about what it means to be non-binary and what it means for them specifically. This one was sent to me by Book Break, so thank you very much for sending this one my way. Little Tiger sent me a copy of Something to be Proud of by Anna Zoe Quirk. Thank you very much, Little Tiger, for sending this one. This is about the friendship between Imogen and Ollie and them organising a Pride festival. This seems like it's going to be a really inclusive book of people with a broad range of experiences and identities, not just in terms of the LGBTQ plus spectrum, but also all different kinds of diversity. Imogen and Ollie bring together lots of different people in their school community to form this kind of dream team to not only organise the Pride Festival, but also to tackle injustices at their school. I think this is one that's going to hit me with all of the feelings. Another book that I've already read and reviewed on the channel is Four Eids and a Funeral by Farida Abike Ayomide and Adiba Jagadar. Both of these authors I've read books from before and really enjoyed them. So when I realised they were bringing out a book that they had co-authored and collaborated on, I was so excited to read it. And thank you very much, Usborne, for giving me a copy of this one. In this book, we are following two teenagers, a boy and a girl, who used to be really close friends, but as they've got older, they've drifted apart and it has created this conflict and tension between them. When they find themselves drawn back together because of the funeral of someone that was close to them, as well as their local Islamic centre burning down, they find themselves coming back together with a joint mission of saving the Islamic centre. They reconnect, they have this joint cause, and they go from enemies to lovers. As I said, I've already read and reviewed this one, and all of the books that I've already read and reviewed, I will leave the wrap-ups where I've spoken about them linked in the cards and in the description as well. And another book by one of the same authors, I have The Doomsday Date by Farida Abike Ayomide. This was the Young Adult World Book Day book for 2024, and this is one of the books that has been really frustrating to have that kind of mental block about not wanting to read something before I've hauled it. I mean, I've clearly broken that rule on multiple occasions, but I tried not to break it for this one because I knew I wanted to do a children's and young adult haul soon. But it is a World Book Day book. It is very short, and I feel like I just want to sit down and read this like immediately. So this is about Sanjeet and Sola on the day before the world is meant to end. Sanjeet is determined to do a number of things before doomsday. So there's 10 things on his list that he needs to tick off before the end of days. Sola doesn't think the world is going anywhere, but because Sanjeet is her friend, she is committed to helping him tick off the things on his list. But the thing that is number 10 on his list is the thing that scares him most, and the thing that he needs Sola to have courage to do as much as himself. One night, two friends and the end of the world. I'm gonna go read this immediately after stopping filming this video. Next, I have Poison for Breakfast by Lemony Snicket. So in Waterstones Piccadilly, they had this big clearance sale like down on their like lower ground floor, like their basement floor. They've had it since I think like the 26th of December. I think people thought it was going to be, that was like their post-Christmas sale, and I think the space is actually still in there. And I didn't go down there for months and months and months because I know what I'm like and I didn't want to go mad and buy loads and loads of books. But I waited and waited like quite a few months, I think 3 or 4 months. I think it was maybe March or April by the time I went down there, and I found this for £1 and I just couldn't resist. It's even got red sprayed edges. So I was a huge A Series of Unfortunate Events fan when I was a kid. I did a reread of it when I was about maybe like 18, 19, which actually, now that I come to think of it, is almost 10 years ago now. So I'm perhaps due another reread, but I've not read any other Lemony Snicket books. I have read one other Daniel Handler book, and I think we should make the distinction, I suppose, because Lemony Snicket is himself a character in the books that he writes, whereas Daniel Handler is not. I'm expecting this to be very strange, puzzling, confusing, quite meta, with Lemony Snicket himself being a character in the book. This is another one that I think will be a very quick read. A young adult book that I've already read and reviewed on the channel as well is You Could Be So Pretty by Holly Bourne. This is a book that in many ways might come across like a dystopian or kind of sci-fi book in a kind of Black Mirror-esque way. But actually what Holly Bourne is doing in this book is exploring things that are certainly already happening, particularly to teenage girls in our society, but kind of women broadly as well, when it comes to beauty standards and the pressure to behave in certain ways and adhere to beauty standards and the illusion of choice that we now seem to have in this society. Like, it is our choice to have very intense skincare regimes, for example. This is a book that really explores and depicts that through our two main characters, one of which really buys into this illusion of choice and puts herself under immense pressure and scrutiny to be the kind of perfect visual product. And we see that in contrast to another character who completely rebels against that system, and we see the growing friendship relationship between them and how they come to understand each other's perspectives a lot more. I always love everything that Holly Bourne writes, but I think this is one of the most thought-provoking books that I've read from her. I don't want to launch into a full review, so as I said, my full review will be linked. The other book I found in that big Waterstones Piccadilly clearance sale was The Crossing by Manjeet Mann, and this is a book that is told in verse, and I really love novels told in verse, particularly for a young adult audience. I think it's a really interesting way of storytelling, and I think for the right story, it is the perfect narrative device to use to deal with kind of really heavy emotional topics, but make them accessible and not intimidating. And this is certainly a book that deals with very heavy topics. It's predominantly about the life of refugees and what it is like to flee a country in search of a safe place, particularly when you are a young person, and it explores the tremendous emotional and physical difficulty that can come from that experience. And yeah, as I said, I think verse is just a really powerful way of telling those difficult stories. The next addition to my shelves was The Breakfast Club Adventures, The Treasure Hunt Monster by Marcus Rashford, written with Alex Velocity-Koya and illustrated by Marta Kissy. So this is the fourth book in the series from Marcus, Alex and Marta that follows our main character, also called Marcus, and his group of friends and their Breakfast Club Detectives Club, who go around their school solving the mysteries. I've been quite committed to this series because I'm such a big supporter of Marcus himself. I actually don't know how many books are left in this series. I'm gonna assume it's a 5-book series, so there's maybe one more to come. But yeah, it's another one that is a very quick read. And a book that is definitely a 5th book in the series, and the final book in the series, very sadly, is Pages & Co. The Last Book Wanderer by Anna James. Now, it's difficult to talk about a 5th book in a series without giving spoilers, so a bit of an overview of this series. In the first book, we're following our main character, Tilly, and as we progress through the series, there are a few other main characters kind of incorporated and brought in. We don't just get Tilly's story, we get quite a breadth of this world that Anna James has created. But in the first book, we are following Tilly, who discovers that she has this power to wander in and out of her favourite books. She notices this when some of her favourite characters start to appear in her grandparents' bookshop where she helps out. And then she realised that she herself can go into those stories and experience those worlds. But as the novels progress, we learn more about disruption that there is in the book wandering world. In every book in this series, you get to experience the novelty of being in a different set of books with different characters, but it's propelled and carried by the plot that actually exists in these novels themselves. I think these books are fantastic for the children and the adults alike who just really, really love books. I find these books such a comfort blanket as someone that adores books and reading. It's just the most wonderful world to spend time in. Now, before I go, I'm quickly going to talk through some of the books that have come onto my shelf from work with a very quick, 1-sentence synopsis of them. Finding Hope by Nicola Baker is an adorably cute, sweet, animal and farm based story. It's middle grade and has very soft messaging around the importance of spending time in nature and with animals for a child's mental well-being. Ember Spark and the Thunder of Dragons by Abby Elphinstone is the first book in a new magical middle grade series. It's another one that really highlights the importance of nature and animals, and in this case we have some magical creatures which are very cute. Happy Hill's Attack of the Giant Danger Kittens is the first book in a new graphic novel series. Think for fans of things like Dogman and Bunny vs. Monkey, this is a new series in a kind of similar vein to that, but it's super, super funny and kind of also reminds me of Squishmallows and Animal Crossing. The Wrong Shoes by Tom Percival is one of the most powerful middle grade novels that I've read so far this year. It explores themes of poverty in a really kind of sensitive but also really honest way. Diary of a Big Bad Wolf by Ben Miller is a funny, highly illustrated kind of fairy tale retelling. It takes the big bad wolf, the character that we know from tales like Little Red Riding Hood, and makes them the center of the story in a very funny way. The Boy Who Fell from the Sky by Benjamin Dean is the latest middle grade from Benjamin Dean, who you may know from Me, My Dad at the End of the Rainbow and The Secret Sunshine Project. But this one is a bit more sci-fi than the middle grades that he has written before. It's a book that explores how young people are often the sector of our society that are way more accepting of people with difference. And it looks at how our main character has to overcome the prejudices that have been taught to him from a young age. But with, as I said, a big sci-fi twist. Dream Hunters by Nazima Pathan is a debut middle grade fantasy novel that is set in a reimagined India, where dreams can be captured and bottled. And in this book, a young girl adventures to save the king and rescue her parents when she uncovers a plot where nightmares are the things that are being bottled. Skandar and the Chaos Trials by A.F. Steadman is the third book in the Skandar series. This is an epic cinematic fantasy series perfect for fans of His Dark Materials or Percy Jackson. It is set in a world that has deadly unicorns, and it follows kids learning to work with their unicorns, to work with their powers, but particularly, of course, our main character, Skandar Smith, and his group of friends. The Things We Leave Behind by Claire Furness is a dystopian book that explores the refugee crisis and what it would be like if it was the people of London that had to flee. It's one that certainly has emotional impact behind it, as is Us in the Before and After by Jenny Valentine. This is a tearjerker. It has a huge emotional impact. It explores explores grief and what it is like to lose your best friend. It has a kind of ghostly supernatural element to it as well, with the best friend not quite being gone because there is something that she desperately needs to tell her friend about the boy she is romantically involved with. Betting on You by Lynn Painter. You may know this author best for Better Than the Movies. This is another YA romance from her that has enemies to lovers and secrets. The Light That Blinds Us by Andy Darcy Theo is a debut YA fantasy novel that has slow burn, friends to lovers, found family. It's high stakes, speculative, and also has themes of mental health and psychosis.
Playing the Field by Ivy Bailey is an enemies to lovers football-themed romance set at Durham University. The star player of the girls' highly successful university football team is tasked with training the new striker of the men's team who has just come over from America. So it's forced proximity and enemies to lovers.
Twice Upon a Time is the new middle grade book from Michelle Harrison. It has a missing woman, a baby left on a doorstep, a locked study, all of these mysteries that the Morrow twins are investigating at the dusty old Fox house. It's mysterious, it's fantastical, and it is magical because the twins have a secret power of their own that may help them solve a decades-old crime. And finally, two pieces of non-fiction that I got from work. So we have Welcome to Sex by Dr. Melissa Kahn and Yumi Steins. This is a highly illustrated, kind of no-nonsense guide to all things puberty, sex, relationships. This book really goes there with the detail in a way that I think is really important and valuable. And finally, Look What You Made Me Do by Kat McKenna. This is a young adult book, but definitely has kind of overlap for an adult audience that explores everything to do with like pop culture and fandom, but particularly through the lens of Taylor Swift. If you are a Swiftie, you're gonna love this book. So that is it. They are all of the books that I'm gonna talk about today. Do let me know down below if you've read any of these and what you thought of them. Have you read any really good children's or young adult books recently? I would love to hear from you. If you want to let me know you're here but you don't have anything in particular to say, leave me the new light blue heart emoji because I'm obsessed with that emoji. I'm using it all of the time. I don't know how I survived without the light blue heart emoji. That is it for me today. I hope you're doing well and I will speak to you in my next video.